The galaxy was quiet, but Captain Ethan Drake never trusted quiet. His ship, the starbound Falcon, glided through the stars, with the hum of its engines echoing in the cockpit. Ethan's eyes scanned the instruments, checking navigation and fuel, but his mind wandered to the countless distress signals he had answered over the years. Most were false alarms or minor accidents, but a few had changed everything. Today, a new signal blinked on his console, weak, shaky, and almost buried beneath static. A small planet in the outer rim was calling for help. Ethan leaned forward, studying the coordinates. "Looks like someone's in trouble," he muttered to himself. "And it's not far from here." Without hesitation, he plotted a course. Ethan wasn't rich, nor did he have a big crew. Just him, his skills, and the Falcon. But if someone was in danger, he couldn't ignore it. Not anymore. As the ship entered the planet's atmosphere, a scene of devastation unfolded below. Villages were in ruins. Fires burned in clusters like tiny suns on the surface. Dust and smoke twisted together, creating a gray cloud that made the landscape almost invisible. Something had attacked here recently. Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. "Looks like we've got survivors." Hopefully. The Falcon touched down near the ruins of a small settlement. Ethan stepped out, helmet on, scanning the area with his handheld scanner. The readings were faint, but definite: a life form. A small one. A child. He moved carefully, aware that danger could still be near. The air was thick with smoke, and the smell of burning wood and alien chemicals made him cough. Then he heard it, a soft, frightened cry. "Over here," the voice whispered, almost blending with the wind. Ethan followed the sound, ducking under broken beams and stepping over debris. He found her crouched beneath a collapsed wall, her silver eyes wide with fear. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, her small body trembling. "Hey there," Ethan said gently, crouching down to her level. "It's okay. You're safe now." The girl stared at him, unsure whether to trust this stranger. Her language was strange, alien, but somehow, Ethan understood a few words. Enough to know she was alone. "I'm Ethan," he said softly. "I'm here to help you. Can you stand?" She nodded slowly, and he lifted her into his arms. She felt surprisingly light, almost fragile. But there was something strange about her, the way she looked at him, like she understood more than a child should. Ethan carried her back to the Falcon, scanning the horizon. Movement flickered in the smoke, a shadow, fast and cautious. Raiders. They were probably responsible for the destruction. "Hang on," Ethan whispered. "We're leaving." Inside the ship, he strapped her in and fired up the engines. The Falcon rose, leaving the ruined planet behind. The girl clung to him, her small hands gripping his arm. Ethan could feel her heartbeat, rapid and scared. "You're safe now," he said again, though part of him knew the danger was not over. Whoever attacked her planet might follow. Hours passed in tense silence. Ethan tried to talk to her, asking simple questions about her family, her home. She didn't answer much, only nodding or shaking her head. But her eyes, so bright and silver, watched him carefully. She seemed to notice everything he did. At one point, the ship shook as a minor asteroid passed too close. She gasped, and Ethan chuckled. "Don't worry," he said. "I've got this." But as the hours went on, Ethan noticed something unusual. The ship's instruments would flicker when she looked at them. Systems that were stable would suddenly spike or glitch. Ethan frowned. "Did you do that?" he asked jokingly. "No? Just a coincidence, huh?" The girl tilted her head but didn't answer. Her eyes glimmered like tiny stars, and for a moment, Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He shook it off. Stress, trauma, happens to anyone after an attack. Still, he couldn't ignore the feeling that there was more to her than met the eye. Something extraordinary. The journey through space was long. Ethan prepared food and water for her, and she ate carefully, watching him the entire time. There were moments when she smiled, tiny and hesitant, and Ethan felt his heart warm. He had rescued many beings before, but something about her felt different, like he wasn't just saving a life, but something much larger. One evening, as the stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport, she whispered something in her strange language. Ethan tilted his head. "What's that?" he asked. She repeated it slowly, pointing to him. He frowned. "You mean me?" She nodded. Then, almost shyly, she pressed a small, metallic pendant into his hand. It was engraved with symbols he didn't recognize, circles, lines, and patterns that seemed alive, glowing faintly. Ethan studied it. "Where did you get this?" he asked. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked proud. Then she hid the pendant under her small hand. Ethan didn't push. Some things weren't ready to be explained. He made a note to study it later. The next day, as the Falcon traveled through a sparsely populated sector, a fleet appeared on the radar. Small ships, fast and sleek, closing in. Pirates, raiders. Ethan's chest tightened. They were after her. "Looks like we have company," he muttered. The girl's eyes glimmered again, and this time, a subtle energy seemed to ripple from her. The approaching ships blinked in the radar, systems glitching for a moment before correcting themselves. Ethan rubbed his eyes. "Okay, that was weird," he said. The raiders attacked, firing plasma bolts at the Falcon. Ethan's hands moved quickly, dodging and weaving. But it was clear they knew her, and they were not leaving without her. The girl's silver eyes glowed brightly, and the ship's shields strengthened almost automatically. Ethan gaped. "Are you helping me?" She nodded slightly, her small hands pressed to her chest. Ethan realized something then. She was no ordinary child, and that realization made him even more determined. Whoever she was, he would protect her. The fight ended with Ethan's clever maneuvering. He led the raiders into a dense asteroid field, using his knowledge of human tactics to outsmart them. The ships collided or fled. The Falcon was scratched, but safe. As silence returned, Ethan looked at the girl. She sat quietly, tired, but her eyes reflected a quiet strength he hadn't seen before in anyone, human or alien. "Looks like you're stronger than you seem," he said, smiling. She smiled back faintly, a secret in her gaze. Ethan didn't know it yet, but the child in his arms was far more than an ordinary orphan. She was a princess, heir to a kingdom that spanned star systems, and the simple act of saving her would soon draw him into a galaxy-wide struggle, one where human courage and ingenuity would be tested in ways he could never imagine. For now, though, he held her close, promising safety. He didn't fully understand her powers, her past, or the enemies that would soon come for her. But he knew one thing. He wouldn't let anyone harm her, not now, not ever. The Falcon soared into the night, stars streaking past like diamonds on black velvet. And as Ethan stared ahead, he felt a spark of excitement, fear, and hope all at once. This was only the beginning. The Falcon moved silently through the emptiness of space. Ethan had kept Leora close since the raid, but the quiet felt heavy. He had tried to study the pendant she had pressed into his hand, but every time he touched it, the metal warmed and hummed faintly. Strange symbols glowed softly, almost like it recognized him. Ethan shook his head. "This thing is more than jewelry," he muttered. "I just don't know how yet." Leora sat quietly in her seat, staring out at the stars. She had calmed since the attack, but Ethan could feel the tension radiating from her small frame. He wanted to ask her more about her past, but he didn't know how to break through the wall she had built around herself. "Do you want to tell me where you're from?" he asked gently. She shook her head, hugging her knees. Ethan sighed, realizing she wouldn't talk yet. Okay, we'll take it slow, he said. We've got time. But there was no time. The alarms on the Falcon blinked suddenly. Ethan jumped to the console. A signal appeared on the radar, faint but unmistakable, a tracking beacon. Someone was following them. Looks like we're not done yet, Ethan muttered. He adjusted the shields and activated evasive maneuvers. The signal was persistent, but the Falcon's speed and his skills kept them just out of reach. Leora's eyes glimmered again. Ethan noticed this time she was leaning forward slightly, concentrating. A small wave of energy pulsed from her, and the tracking signal blinked and faltered. "You did that?" he asked, stunned. She only looked at him, her silver eyes calm and knowing, as if she were telling him, "I can do more than you think." Ethan shook his head, trying to make sense of it. "You're full of surprises, kid." The next day, they arrived at a bustling space station, a place where travelers, traders, and refugees from many worlds found shelter. Ethan hoped they could rest there, repair the Falcon, and stay under the radar for a while. As they landed, Leora's attention was drawn to the other children on the station. Some were playing, some were crying, some were helping their parents. She approached cautiously, her small hand brushing against Ethan's. "Go on," he said softly. She hesitated, then walked toward a group of children. Slowly, she started interacting with them, using gestures and small words. Ethan watched, noting how easily she seemed to understand them. Even when she didn't speak their language fluently, her gestures were precise, intelligent. Later, as Ethan worked on the Falcon's engines, he noticed something unusual. Tools moved slightly on their own, sliding closer to him when he reached for them. Sparks jumped from wires in patterns that seemed intentional. "Not again," he muttered. "Something's happening, and it's her." Leora entered the hangar, watching him. She tilted her head, then placed her hand lightly on a small control panel. The sparks stopped. The tools stayed in place. Ethan stepped back, awestruck. You're controlling things," he said slowly. She nodded. Ethan rubbed his face. "This is incredible. And terrifying." And it was clear to him now. Leora was not an ordinary child. She was extraordinary, and that meant danger. That evening, as the station quieted and most visitors went to their quarters, the Falcon's radar picked up faint signals approaching the station. Ethan's stomach sank. These weren't ordinary pirates, they were organized, careful, and methodical. Someone had sent them for the girl. Ethan glanced at Leora, who was drawing strange symbols on a piece of scrap metal with a small stick. Her silver eyes seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. "Leora," he said gently. She looked up, calm but alert. She repeated a phrase in her language, pointing to herself. Ethan frowned. He didn't understand the words, but the tone was serious. The station's alarms sounded shortly after. Doors sealed automatically, and a group of armed figures entered. They were humanoid, but clearly alien, armored, and moving with precision. Their leader held a device that scanned the area rapidly. "Target acquired," the leader said in a harsh voice. "Prepare to capture the child." Ethan realized immediately. They were after her, not him. But he wouldn't let them take her. He grabbed a nearby crate and used it to block their path, then activated a nearby crane to drop a heavy beam, slowing the attackers. Leora's eyes glimmered, and the panel on the crane seemed to obey her silently. She raised her hand, and the beam moved just slightly, enough to tip the attackers off balance. Ethan's jaw dropped. "Okay, yeah, you're definitely not ordinary." The battle in the station was chaotic but short. Using a combination of human ingenuity, the Falcon's equipment, and Leora's emerging abilities, Ethan forced the attackers to retreat. They left behind a small device, the same type he had seen on their ships before. It hummed faintly, recording everything. Ethan picked it up and frowned. They're going to come back, and they'll know we're here. Leora approached him and, without warning, pressed the pendant she had given him to her chest. The symbols glowed brightly, projecting a hologram. Ethan stepped back, stunned. The image was of a city, enormous and radiant, floating above a planet. And in the center stood a figure, a woman, regal and commanding, wearing the same symbols that were on the pendant. Ethan's mouth went dry. She is royalty. Leora's eyes met his. For the first time, she spoke clearly, her voice small but firm. Princess. Ethan blinked. You're a princess? She nodded. The truth hit him like a comet. All this time, he had thought he was saving a helpless, ordinary child. But she was the heir to a kingdom. A powerful kingdom that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Suddenly, the stakes became terrifyingly clear. Every raid, every attack, they weren't random. They were attempts to capture her, control her, or use her for political gain. Ethan's mind raced. He had to protect her. But now, it wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a mission with consequences that could echo across entire star systems. He knelt in front of her. All right, princess. I get it now. You're not just a child. You're someone very important. Leora's eyes shone, a mix of fear and relief. She trusted him. And that trust was all Ethan had to guide him. Over the next few days, Ethan helped Leora understand her abilities. She could manipulate technology, sense danger, and even communicate in ways humans couldn't fully comprehend. Every demonstration of her skill made Ethan more convinced that she was not just powerful, but brilliant. And yet, there was innocence in her too. She laughed at small things, enjoyed simple stories, and clung to Ethan when she was scared. Ethan realized he was learning as much from her as she was from him. But the danger loomed. Through hidden channels, Ethan detected new ships heading toward the station faster, better armed, and determined. They had tracked Leora here, and they would not fail this time. Ethan adjusted the Falcon's systems and checked the station's layout. He needed a plan, not just to escape, but to protect her. That night, Leora whispered to him as they prepared for sleep. They will come. We must leave. Ethan nodded. I know. We'll leave at dawn. And I promise, princess, I won't let them touch you. Her silver eyes glimmered in the dim light. She placed her small hand on his, and for a moment, Ethan felt the weight of responsibility settle on him. He had thought he was saving an ordinary child. But now he understood. He was protecting a future queen, a symbol of hope and power in a galaxy that often had none. Ethan stared out at the stars, feeling both fear and determination. The journey ahead would be dangerous, but he was ready. Together, human and princess, they would face whatever came next. And Leora? She finally allowed herself to hope, not just for safety, but for a companion who believed in her, one human who would fight for her, no matter the cost. Tomorrow, the real journey would begin. The Falcon drifted silently among the stars, but silence was deceiving. Ethan Drake adjusted the controls, watching the readouts carefully. Leora sat next to him, her silver eyes calm but alert, the pendant glowing faintly against her chest. Ethan had spent days preparing, studying the enemy's movements and mapping a path that could keep them safe. They'll come for us, he said, not as a warning but as a fact. Leora nodded. They will try, but we are ready. Ethan smiled faintly. Ready? Maybe, but never confident. He had fought pirates and raiders before, but this was different. These enemies were organized, powerful, and relentless. And they wanted Leora not just to capture her, but to control her kingdom. The Falcon's sensors picked up movement ahead, a fleet of ships, sleek, dark, and aggressive, approaching at high speed. Ethan tightened his grip on the controls. "Here we go," he muttered. "Time to see what humans and a princess can really do." The battle begins. As the enemy fleet closed in, Ethan activated the Falcon's shields and weapons. Plasma cannons hummed as energy beams charged. Leora stood suddenly, pressing her hand against the pendant. The symbols glowed brightly, casting a soft light throughout the cockpit. Ethan watched in awe as the ship's shields pulsed stronger than ever. The Falcon seemed alive. "You're doing that?" he asked, astonished. Leora nodded. "Together," she said simply. The first wave of enemy ships attacked. Plasma bolts streaked past the Falcon, some striking the shields, some hitting empty space. Ethan maneuvered with expert precision, dodging and weaving through the barrage. But it was Leora's abilities that made the difference. She extended her hands, and energy rippled outward. Enemy systems glitched. Targeting arrays failed. One ship spun uncontrollably and collided with another. Ethan grinned. "Okay, kid, that's incredible." Yet even with her powers, the enemy pressed on. They were clever, splitting into multiple squads, attempting to flank the Falcon. Ethan adjusted the trajectory, using the debris of asteroids and small moons to hide the ship. "You're thinking too small," Leora said suddenly, her voice calm and commanding. Ethan looked at her. She wasn't just guiding him, she was directing the battle. Her hand hovered over the console, and the Falcon responded as if it were an extension of her will. "All right," Ethan said. "Let's make this fun." HFY moment. Human ingenuity. Ethan activated the Falcon's auxiliary systems, improvised traps and decoys built from spare components. Lights flashed, holograms projected false ships, and sensors sent conflicting signals. The enemy pilots fell for the tricks, firing at empty space while the Falcon moved unseen. "Nice work," Leora said, her silver eyes gleaming. "Your thinking is strange, but effective." Ethan chuckled. "Humans are good at thinking outside the box." The Falcon darted among asteroids, weaving between enemy fire. Leora's powers enhanced their speed and stealth. Together, they created an almost perfect synergy, human cleverness, paired with alien talent. One by one, the enemy ships were disabled, retreating in confusion. But then, the leader of the enemy fleet appeared on the radar, a massive command ship, bristling with weapons. Faster than anything Ethan had ever seen. "This one is different," he said, tension rising. "We need a plan." Leora stepped forward, placing both hands on the pendant. The symbols glowed intensely, and a holographic map of the enemy ship appeared. She pointed to weak points in the design, showing Ethan where to strike. "Follow me," she said. "We can win if we work together." Climax. Facing the main threat. Ethan piloted the Falcon with precision, dodging the massive ship's attacks, while Leora guided him toward the weak points. They weaved through laser fire, avoiding the deadly energy nets designed to trap them. The enemy fired a massive plasma cannon. Ethan twisted the Falcon sharply, narrowly avoiding the beam. Sparks flew across the hull. Leora extended her hand, and the beam faltered, spreading harmlessly into space. "They're trying to overwhelm us," Ethan shouted. "I know," Leora replied calmly. "We must focus. Together." The Falcon surged forward, dodging and firing at critical points. Ethan used human tactics, feints, sudden changes of direction, unpredictable maneuvers. Leora amplified every action with her power. A weak point in the enemy ship's hull glowed briefly, then collapsed under precise strikes. The command ship shuddered, systems failing. The enemy leader barked orders, furious. But it was too late. Ethan and Leora worked in perfect synchronization, and the massive ship began to drift, powerless. For a moment, Silence fell. The battlefield was quiet except for the hum of the Falcon. Ethan looked at Leora. "You did it," he said, amazement in his voice. "No," she said softly. "We did it." Ethan realized she was right. Without humans' ingenuity and his quick thinking, her powers alone might not have been enough. Together, they were unstoppable. Resolution, victory, and recognition. With the enemy fleet defeated, the remaining ships retreated. Ethan repaired the Falcon while Leora rested, exhausted but calm. Her small hands held the pendant, which now glowed softly, reflecting her royal heritage. Ethan looked at her, a smile spreading across his face. "You know, I thought I was saving an ordinary child. But you're extraordinary." Leora's silver eyes sparkled. "I am a princess," she said quietly. "But you saved me, not because of who I am, but because you chose to care." Ethan felt a swell of pride. Humanity had survived countless challenges through courage, ingenuity, and empathy. This was one more example, a moment that proved even in a galaxy of incredible beings, humans could stand tall. Later, they transmitted a message to Leora's home planet. The Royal Council received it with gratitude and awe. Leora was safe, and the human who had protected her became a hero not only on their world, but throughout allied systems. HFY theme and emotional close. As they traveled toward Leora's kingdom, Ethan reflected on the journey. He had thought his mission was simple: rescue a child. Instead, he had discovered a being of immense potential and helped shape the future of a galaxy. Leora turned to him, her voice soft but confident. "I will not forget what you did. You saved more than me, you saved hope." Ethan smiled. "And you reminded me that humans can rise to any challenge. If we believe in each other." They laughed together. A simple, human moment of connection. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, but fear had given way to hope. Together, human and princess, they had faced impossible odds and triumphed. Ethan knew the galaxy would continue to challenge him. But one thing was certain: humanity was capable of greatness, of courage, of heart. And he had seen it shine in its purest form through action, ingenuity, and compassion. Leora, once thought to be an ordinary child, now stood on the threshold of her destiny. And Ethan? He would always be there. Her protector, her friend, her human champion. The Falcon soared through the galaxy, carrying them toward new adventures, new challenges, and a future shaped by courage, hope, and the unbreakable bond between a human and a princess.